G'day guys, Tom Hollings here, co-founder of Different Drop, and welcome to the first episode of From the Cellar. We are very excited to be up in the Hunter Valley with our good mate Angus Vinden.
I'm good, mate. Thanks for carving out some time to come over and look what we do.
Any excuse, mate, just a nice sunny day up in Colburn, and lovely to try through the wines. Mate, what we really wanted to do today is, you've got an incredible family story and history here with Vinden Estate and the wines that you and your parents have made for a long time. We wanted to, I guess, look at a couple of wines that you've chosen and talk a little bit about the history of Vinden and what you've done in the past and where things are going. So you've kindly chosen a couple of wines. What's in the glass here?
So got two wines, both from Somerset, which is of our main vineyard, which we'll get to a little bit later. So Somerset for me is a varietal I think is going to be a big part of our future at Somerset and hopefully in the valley. So I thought it was something that was something to lead with, but it's also that has been in the ground there for 30 years. So it's also something that someone else had the foresight to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of nice, I guess, to look at Somerset and also my parents, but that wine's something a little bit special for us,
Chenin Blanc,
which is pretty cool.
And you were saying before that this is easily the oldest Chenin Blanc plantings in the region.
I believe it's only Chenin planted in Hunter. I could be wrong, but it's,
1980s.
1987, so I think anyone's crazy enough to plant Chenin in the 80s, except for my mentor, Glenn. But I'm on board. It looks great, so I'm pretty stoked with it. And then we'll do a first Shiraz or single barrel we did as well. But
so you mentioned, Glenn, obviously this is a big part of your winemaking tutelage and career. So where we're sitting, is that your winery? One of my favourite wineries as well.
Thank you.
In the Hunter, on the old family property where you grew up. And it feels this is your life, isn't it? You
Very
grew up
much.
just outside. Yeah. And your vineyard. Now, the Somerset vineyard, a separate site, what you said, about 8 kilometres south of here, closer towards Cessnock. And give us a little bit about your connection to Somerset.
So I guess to speak about Somerset, I think you have to speak about Mum and Dad. So Mum and Dad set this property up. They were not from a wine background, but Dad had one of those epiphany moments where he had a bottle of Shiraz in the probably late 70s and literally had that glass of wine and just went, fuck, okay, I want to do something with this. And 15, 20 years later, he decided to move up to the valley where he fell in love with wine, and he and lots of friends came up and the Rothbury days and spent many nights drinking Black Label, sitting around tables with Len and doing options and having fun. So there's always been a very stoic sort of Hunter origins in terms of what Mum and Dad wanted to do here. So we grew up on the property and there was no vineyard here. They planted some vines starting in 95, and I guess I describe what Mum and Dad did more as a bit of a hobby farm.
Yeah.
They had different careers, they did different things, but wine was always the passion. It was always the focus of what they wanted to do and create an estate where he'd eventually be able to retire from job one and do job two. But it turns out that when you don't put all your focus into job two, it never really gets to take off. So they did a really amazing job of building a great little small business.
Well, I visited here. So on my very first trip to the Hunter Valley, when I was just starting my own wine journey, in my early 20s, and came here to visit on a tour, I think, and we went rogue and popped into Vinden. And this was before you were making the wines. You were probably possibly still in high school. I don't know. I'm not much older than you.
As long as you didn't say diapers,
I'm not that old. But no, and I remember there was Semillon, there was like Shiraz, there was the Alicante Boucher, and it was just a beautiful spot. I remember thinking like, oh, what a great place. And for you to grow up there, I guess, and then come and take over the reins is pretty special.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing. Like in terms of the property, like it was 4 paddocks of wheat 30 years ago. So when people come here now, they go, "Oh, it looks great," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, I've got a bad back, but it's because we didn't get a tractor until I was 26." So it's been amazing to grow up, and I guess this is my 24 is the 10th anniversary of when I took over, which is head case, which is kind of cool to start looking back and go, fuck, it's been 10 years of making wines on your own label, which is kind of daunting, but also kind of amazing in a way. But I think where it began was sort of, the end of sort of 13 and 14, we sort of really got interested and I sort of started pulling away from what I was studying architecture and I was studying viticulture, but I was also working at Somerset as a young viti in the vineyard, and it was sort of, I guess that burgeoning relationship was really made my love of wine grow, and then made me want to jump into making wine and sort of take over Mum and Dad's, because they reached the point where they were like, I think we've done it for would have been 20 years, and they were like, I'm getting tired. I think we just want to drink what's in the cellar for the next 20 years and relax. And it sort of, Dad's like, I'll give you a year to see what happens. And it was sort of, I started really getting interested, and that's when Somerset really started taking off. I was working over there in the vineyard because Glenn was looking after our vineyard.
Right.
I was doing pruning and a little bit of work around the place, but he was the viticulturist, if you will. He was managing the property. And he ran a contract business where we looked after a couple hundred acres around the valley. So we looked after other vineyards, ours, our neighbours across the road, and obviously his vineyard as well, which is Somerset Vineyard. So I was working there, and the first year I worked with him, I had to basically beg, actually almost beg, to be able to buy some fruit. And I was like, I guess not many, 24, asking a fifth generation farmer who's been selling fruit to O'Shea and Lindemans for 30 years, and then at Rossbury, and one of his vineyard hands wants to buy fruit. I think he was like, this guy's fucking mad. Like,
he's a head case.
Like literally maybe, but it's like, first time, I guess in his life, he had someone actually working for him who wanted to make wine as opposed to just selling to big wineries. And they'd been growers for 5 generations. Like the property was settled in 1863, planted to sometime around 1880, 1890, ripped up in roughly mid-40s. We don't know the exact year. That was taken to the grave of Glenn and Ivan, who passed away a few years ago. And then replanting began in 65. So the vineyards we were looking after are farming now sort of 50, approaching 60 years in age. And that was after many a days and working out in the fields with him, asking him every question under the sun. He eventually agreed to sell me 1 tonne of Shiraz, 1 tonne of Semillon. But the beautiful thing about 2015, it was a really challenging season in the Hunter. So 2 other winemakers turned their nose up at the fruit.
Right.
And so I went, I'll take some more. The fruit looks great. Like we just need to sort a little bit in the vineyard. We'll do it. So we ended up taking like 2, 3, maybe 4 tonnes of Shiraz, and then he gave me a bit more Semillon. We ended up with 2 tonnes. Ended up with 6 tonnes first vintage, and which is super exciting. And it was sort of the really fortuitous circumstance of that vintage, because it was the constant thing of lots of winemakers, maybe being winemakers, wanting perfection, and that's the case. But when you're a grower, you deal with the realities of how growing fruit's not perfect. You do the best you can, particularly in a place like the Hunter Valley. It's more challenging. And it was that love of vineyard site and place and willing to go, well, as a winemaker, I'm going to treat the vineyard like a grower.
Yeah.
And then buy the fruit every year, but we'll do what we can. We ended up making some pretty cool wines that year. Like, I think my first wine ever made, we got 94 points, and I was like dancing around like a fucking drunk chimpanzee, just like so happy. But I was like, to me, it was like, that was one of those light bulb moments where it's like, it doesn't have to be what people perceive as something else. I think there's a way to look at a vineyard, and it's a way to look at site and understand that great sites produce great wines pretty much every year. And Somerset is one of those great sites, which is shown for, almost 160 years.
You've always had this special, I think, like connection and affinity for the site, because I can remember for the last 5, 7, 8 years talking to you, there's the stuff that's coming out of the home block here, which is fun and, part of the history.
It's Rosé, it's Nouveau, it's Gamay, it's fun. Light, fun, fresh,
but
wine.
Somerset is where your heart's been, I think.
Always.
And you can see that in the wines and the way you talk about them. Chenin Blanc, as you say, the only Chenin really in the Hunter. Why does this work on that vineyard? Talk to us a little bit about the site and what makes it actually unique, and I guess what makes this work.
So Somerset's quite a large, sprawling property. It's just under 100 acres. Altogether, it's about 80 acres under vine. Most of it's very old vine, so very low yielding. We get about a tonne to the acre across most blocks. And that's what I was saying to you before. We're in the Cellar. So we've had a particularly challenging set of 5 or 6 years, from drought, bushfires to flooding. So I feel like this year's the first year we're sort of getting the vineyard back into a bit of a rhythm. Yeah. Certainly would have been nice to buy it not having that, but it was sort of Mother Nature is Mother Nature. And like we had a ripping 4 vintages before we bought it, and then it just, the wheels fell off the world.
So I guess just for people that haven't followed the story, so when did you buy the vineyard?
So we bought the vineyard, I think, we leased the vineyard for 2020. Glenn passed away April Fool's Day, it's the 1st of April of 2020. And then we sort of managed to sort of figure out a way to do it with the family and I, not through banks. It was sort of pretty amazing. They helped vendor finance us into the project. So it was sort of the relationship Glenn and I had was that strong. The property never went on the market. We never had a conversation with anyone else. We didn't really haggle on price. We went, this is the price. This is what we think it's worth. Let's do that. And
it must be special now for you to get to now be the new caretaker of
that's amazing. Yeah, I think as a custodian, I guess I would just say, because it will be passed on to someone else. It's been amazing that, I guess, that relationship with Glenn and the love we had of the site was so strong that even after he passed away, his family were willing to pass that on. So I think for me, like, the love of site and is so strong that place is just one of the great sites in Australian wine, but also in Hunter Valley wine. And it's one of the only sites where you actually have a real diversity of soil profiles. So like the Chenin is grown on sand. Yeah. Like fine talcum powder sand. The property's divided by a creek. So you've got really fine sandy alluvial flats on one side. And then next to that, you have this amazing, unique situation where you go from flat, there's a small creek, and then there's just this beautiful hillside. It goes between 30 and 40 degrees, so it's quite steep.
Yeah.
But once you get up about, 20% of the way up, it just turns into limestone. So there's 60 feet of limestone. So much limestone, the purity is it's 1% off the grade of mining. The purity of it's so strong, and it's not big, clumpy, heavy. It's fine, it's soft, it's calcareous. Like if you drill into it to put a post, it's just like powder. So it's literally like, I guess you'd describe it, in French you'd describe it as a Grand Cru section. There'd be plenty of other crus around it, but the mid-section of that site is just stunning. So you've got reds all on the top of the hill, and then Chardonnay, Semillon, and the Chenin on the sand. So I guess to go back to sprawling answer, Chenin, I think Chenin's challenging to grow anywhere in the world. Like it's one of the only wines that works with a bit of botrytis. A lot of the great Chenins of the world, Francois Cotat and things like that come out of the Loire. They're amazing, and you've got for me it's pretty super interesting as a varietal because it's one of the only varietals that you can actually pretty much do everything. You can make amazing sparkling, light whites, rich sort of barrel driven styles like Chardonnay, which is what we're drinking now, to then riper styles, think Vouvray, Marc Redef, and then you go into dessert wines.
Oh, it's one of the great grapes of the world.
Does everything perfectly.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think in Australia, it's often had this kind of workhorse reputation. And it's unfair because the variety can be so much more. And we're just starting to discover this now, what the variety can do. And I think this is for me, in that top kind of half a dozen Australian Chenin Blancs where it's really making a statement about what the variety can do. It's got depth of flavour. It's got some structure.
Thank you.
It's got length, but freshness. So it's obviously a special site. And I mean, great vineyards around Somerset as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty special spot. You've got, within a couple of kilometres, you've got the King Vineyard, which is now you know as Mount Pleasant, which is where O'Shea made wine. You've got Drayton's, and then you've got the Oakey Creek Vineyard, which is what's Bregman's fame. Larson comes from there. You've got Ablington just down the road.
Which is the Beckers, obviously.
Yeah, Beckers. Then you've got Tyrrell Stevens next door.
Tyrrell, sorry, I haven't heard of Tyrrell's, new producer?
Yeah, they're starting to figure it out. So.
Hey, should we have a look at the red while we were talking about because you were mentioning the
but I guess
that's unreal. You were mentioning that as the vineyard goes up from the creek bed there and gets into the limestone, that's where all that old Shiraz is planted, 60-year-old vines.
But I think the difference in the site in particular is that we don't get a lot of frost in the Hunts, but we do in summer. But when you look at the frosts that come in to like the valley of Somerset, it's sort of one side, all the white side, you do get quite heavy frost late winter, and that's where the Chenin is. It's very cold. But as soon as you cross the creek, cross through the area we've revegetated, you start climbing the hill. Up the top of that, there's no frost, and it goes from really fine granular clay, and obviously as you get further up hills, less and less topsoil.
Thank you.
And
now that was the 22 Chenin, which is the current release.
Yes.
23 coming soon, which looks exciting as well. This is it 2016?
2016. So we...
And Snero Derva?
No. So 2016 was the first time we started the little single barrel project. So the first time we went, I guess it came from working at the vineyard, and I think from last time we pulled out a block, we had 67 different blocks of fruit. So anyone else thinks you're fucking mad, and I agree I am. But in terms of how the vineyard is, because it's literally runs around a hillside, and then you're in a valley and a flat. The vineyards are all planted across the contours to minimise erosion. So every time you have a change in contour, every little section. So we used to do 20 to 30 different picks for Somerset.
Wow.
Maybe more actually in some years. Wow. So like usually there's 10 different picks of Shiraz.
Wow.
Just across one site. So in 200 metres, there'll be 2 to 3 weeks difference.
How 2-3 weeks? That's incredible.
So like
and
the
that
little...
would be almost unheard of, like to have that much diversity in picking times across one vineyard.
Which was kind of, and this is where this idea of doing single barrels came from, is that, well, the east side of the hill so different to the west side of the hill, not just in morning sun versus afternoon sun. It's only the last 2 hours of the first and last 2 hours of the day you really see that difference in sunlight.
Well, you used to do that project, didn't you? With the
do we have any 4 points to compass? No,
we don't have south.
No, so there is no west, south. North, east, Shiraz, and they were so different from each other.
So yeah, this is the original. So we just did a west in 2016. So like the east, the soil's slightly different. It's more bright red, super friable. More topsoil, but lots of limestone. North, it's kind of like where the red meets the orange of the clay. Still really friable. Probably slightly less topsoil than the east side. And the west then is slightly more coarse, a richer clay. I mean, it's been more sunbaked for millions of years. So slightly less fertile. And with that also then comes really, really deep limestone as well. So where you've got quite uniformity in terms of at least the soil within reason, the limestone within reason, the sun affects it so much. So the east is always the first side of the hill to be picked, which doesn't make any sense. Because you think the west gets more sun. But I speak to Chris at Terroir, because they've got Stevens next door. He's like, east is always first as well. It doesn't make any sense. But it's just one of those, same thing happens next door. There's something about that little section of hill and that section of Pecolbin that it just does something amazing.
This is stunning, because it's got obviously got richness and intensity there. But it's got this real like charcuterie smoked meat sort of character as well. Quite ferrous and meaty.
So 16 from memory. Yeah, 16 was wet early. And then 16 we began with the beginning of the drought. I think it was probably the latest we've ever picked Shiraz. I think it was like January 31st. It rained, then it just stopped.
Yeah, right.
And then it didn't start raining again until 2021. No, right after the bushfires. It would have been 2020. It was like 4 years.
It was wild.
It just didn't rain.
Big vintages,
and so you went from having this quite cool, wet summer, and then it just dried out. We had like 30 degrees for like every day for a month. So we picked 16 very late. So got really long hang time. So it was, I don't know, it's quite some really nice little numbers of wine from 16 made. There'd be lots of vineyards that didn't make wine if they decided not to run the gambit and stop spraying and everything else. But I think it's sort of very much the epitome of what Somerset's always been. This is Burgundy. Even under this light, it looks like Pinot, and that's beautiful. What it should be.
And we just tasted the 23, didn't we? Which isn't released yet, but it looks almost Pinot-esque. Like it's a remarkable wine. It harks back to a previous era of Hunter River Burgundy and these elegant, light to medium-bodied Shiraz that just really speak of this place. And I think this vineyard, it's so exciting because you mentioned Stevens Vineyard and Ablington and some of these great sites around it that I think are really unique in Australian wine. There's nowhere that can make Shiraz like these places. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, thank you. I think Somerset for me has always been... Glenn always drilled into me that he was like, Angus, Somerset is a Burgundy vineyard. And it was that, I guess, 15 vintage I was talking about before where the winemakers turn their nose up at fruit. And I was like, well, that's the Burgundy year. And it's not that the fruit's underripe, but it's sort of... Hunter is often lighter in colour. And to me, I guess the opposite. Like, I couldn't give a shit about if my Shiraz has colour or not. Like, it's about the flavour in the wine. I mean, great Pinot can be dark. It can also be light. Like, I think for me, more than anything else, is about looking at the chemistry of the grape. How does it taste? And is there phenolic ripeness in that wine? Even in a cool year, it might need some more hang time. But again, it's easy to say that when the vineyard does that. When we try and farm it organically and regeneratively and make our own compost and cover crops, you do all this stuff for it. But we're just sort of, I don't know, gently massaging it. Like it's the site that does that.
It's
like home block here could never do that. Yeah, I guess in some ways you got to.
Yeah, but Somerset can't do out Cante Boucher, mate.
Definitely not. So,
so this is wonderful, and like well done, you and Hannah. Obviously working very hard on the site, and the wines are showing that work, and I think they're stunning, Angus. So congrats, mate, and exciting future for Somerset. Thanks for bringing us into the cellar.
Yeah, great. Love to be here.
And
yeah.
well, we'll go enjoy lunch, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Some homemade pizzas.
Sounds good.
All right, cheers. Thanks,
Cheers.
mate. Good on you.
Tonto.
Cheers.